If you're a Christian man in your 20s, these habits will set you on a path to be godly, wise, and successful. And a lot of guys, they waste their 20s. This is a season where they spend a lot of time partying, sleeping in, bouncing between jobs without building any real skills. And as a result, this period of their life, they don't have much to show for it when they enter in their 30s. But if you do these 4 habits consistently, you'll be way ahead of your peers. And down the line, your family will be so thankful that you made these changes to your life. I've spent thousands of hours studying the Bible and learning from older godly men who are successful, and they have these 4 habits in common. The first habit is spiritual development. If you're gonna be godly and wise for your family, then you have to be growing spiritually. And one really important part of spiritual development is being involved in church. And not just going and sitting in a pew, but finding a place that you can get involved. Because what happens when you do that is other people will invest in you, because that's part of discipleship in a church, is like you serve people, but other people pour into you as well. And your church might have an opportunity to get involved in a small group. Well, that is so important. And then again, not just going, but finding a place to serve. Is there a place where you can serve in the food ministry or the homeless ministry, or maybe even teach a class? But if you're going to grow spiritually, you have to be attending church, but not just attending, also get involved. And another part of spiritual development is planning a time to meet with God. And one of the things that I say, I'm a youth pastor, and I tell our students that it's important to fight to meet with God. That's something that my youth pastor used to say, because if you don't intentionally put time on the calendar where you're gonna spend time in God's word and in prayer, then it's not gonna happen, because spiritual development and time to meet with God doesn't just naturally happen. You have to be intentional. And another part of spiritual development is a servant mindset. There's a big difference between going through life thinking, what can other people do for me? And going through life being very intentional about what you can do for other people. And that's something that our society doesn't really teach, especially like a lot of the businesses are very focused on, it's all about the consumer, which is great for making money. But as a person, if you are only going in different circles, when you go to work, when you go to church, when you go to the store, if everyone's all focused on you, you can really be a selfish person very naturally, because all of these environments are teaching you to be selfish. But it's so much better to be a servant. When you're a servant, you're others focused. You're looking for opportunities to meet other people's needs rather than being focused on yourself. So the first important habit is spiritual development. And the second important habit, if you're a Christian man in your 20s, that you need to develop is time management. Time management implies that you are intentional with the way that you spend your minutes, your hours, and your days. One really important part of time management is weekly scheduling. I've said on here before that I don't wake up on Monday morning wondering what I'm gonna do, because I have a calendar that has repeating events that every single week I know what I'm doing every hour of the week. Now, does that mean that every single week on Tuesday at 1:30 I'm in the same spot? Yes, but that's only because I have a planning meeting with the church staff I work with at 1:30 that never gets moved. But there's a lot of things in my calendar that get moved, but I use like a drag and drop system. So in my mind, I don't really care when each time blocked event gets done. I just care that it gets done. So I'll move things earlier in the day and later in the day. But each week I have a schedule. I'm intentional about that. I'm not just letting my day happen to me. I am intentionally imposing a schedule on my week, knowing that certain things change, that's fine. But I have a plan, and I'm not just randomly jumping into certain tasks, because honestly, you're never gonna do the most important work if you're waiting for a feeling of motivation to do the most important work. Like, if I just wait until I feel like studying for my sermon, well, that's a mentally rigorous task, and when I just wait for that feeling, a lot of times that feeling never comes, or it comes, but it's only brief. So that's why it's so important to schedule for me that time every single week where I'm doing the most important work. And also, when it comes to time management, you should not only do the most important work, but you should do that first. When you are thinking about your day, your attention span is better in the morning than it is in the afternoon for most people. And another thing is like what you eat for lunch. I mean, that can greatly affect your attention span. But when you're doing the most important work first in the day, then you're logically putting the less important stuff towards the back part of the latter half of the day. And a lot of times that time is more fluid. Like you can end up not having an afternoon you thought you were gonna have, but when you do the most important work first, what got done that day was actually the most important thing. Another part of time management that's important to do is to write things down. You know, your mind it's made for having ideas, not for storing them. So you shouldn't randomly be trying to remember 12 things you're supposed to do today. That's a recipe for disaster. Instead, you should use some either to-do list, or for me personally, that calendar that I said I have a weekly scheduling done, I use that on my computer, but I also can access that from my phone. And I personally really like the calendar app, Fantastical, but I can go to the day and I can scroll through and I can look at, okay, what am I supposed to do today? Like if I look at my day right now, I'm recording YouTube from 3:30 until 6:30. I just have that time blocked. But then on my computer, I can look at the week, and I can also look at the next 14 days when I have like a 49-inch monitor at home. So I can see all these days of how I'm spending all this time. And so that's like a large scale view. But then when I get really detailed, I can look at my day, okay? I got the gym at this time. I got my 1 John. I memorized the book of 1 John for one of my classes. And then I have a lunch and then filming for the video. So I have all that planned by the day, and that is written down. I'm not just trying to randomly remember what am I supposed to do today. Another very important part of time management is avoiding procrastination. Now, when I said that word, that may have really been cringy to you because it's just, oh, the procrastination is terrible. Well, procrastination comes from a few different things. Could come from perfectionism. Maybe every time you sit down to do a task, you feel like it has to be perfect. Sometimes our academics can train us that way. Academics as a whole, not like the teachers, but when you write a paper, you're taught that at the end of the semester, there's this one submission where most of your grade hangs on how you do on that submission. But in real life, what tends to make you better at things is doing it over and over again. So if you're a perfectionist, you have to be really cautious that doesn't make you wait to start projects until the last minute. Another thing that can cause procrastination is waiting for a feeling. I mentioned earlier, if I wait for a feeling to start my sermon prep instead of starting it when I have that time scheduled, I could be waiting for that feeling for a very long time. You don't want to wait for feelings. You want to have a time when you start, and you don't want to rely on your emotions. You want to work based on the discipline of starting tasks at a scheduled time rather than waiting for your feelings to push you in the right direction. Another thing that people can do that leads to procrastination is they're always waiting for like a price to drop or to order a certain kind of part, and they allow their circumstances, they always find an excuse to not start. And then some people, they ride adrenaline that comes when you like start a task at the last minute. And so they're always procrastinating, putting things off. If you're gonna be a godly man in your 20s, you're gonna be wise, successful, and the leader of your family that God has called you to be, you have to manage your time. And that is very important, and you have to figure out how to beat that procrastination monster that tends to creep up on you. And guys, one of the best ways to beat procrastination is just planning. Okay, so if you're planning your week and you're starting things on time, that's a muscle that you work over time, and eventually you'll be able to beat procrastination. The third habit that godly men in their 20s need to develop is financial planning. Now, your house choice is a big deal there. If you don't know, it's wise to stay under 30% or 33% of your income for your housing. So if you make $3,000 a month, then you should not spend more than $1,000 on your house. Now, for me, that is scaled way out of proportion because I've always had to pay $1,000 a month in school, basically since I graduated high school. So that's been like 7 years of school now, but that expense has changed my housing choices personally. But you may not have that expense for school, but in general, it's so important to not overpay for housing, whether it's renting or buying a house. Another thing is your car. Don't take out a big, gigantic loan on your car because, man, that'll bleed your bank account dry. And it's so important to be good with your finances because it's not just about having a large estate one day or having wealth. It's about being a generous person, which you develop when you don't have money, because sometimes even the people that have the least money are the most greedy because they are so focused on money. So it's not about what you have, but it's about being a generous person. And when you develop the ability to plan wise in your financial world, then you're gonna be able to be generous in a completely different way. Another thing that will affect your finances is eating out. Guys, if you eat out too much, it's time to learn how to cook. And maybe one day you'll have a wife, or maybe you already have a wife that cooks for you. That is very helpful. But until that time, be careful with eating out because that'll run your bank account dry as well. Another important aspect of financial planning is investing. Now, a lot of people don't invest, and it's a shame because your money, if you invest it wisely, will one day work harder than your back and your brain combined. And your money will grow and it'll work while you're asleep. That's why it's so important to get ahead of your investing. If you're a guy in your 20s, man, start now. It can be Schwab. That's where my IRA account, my Roth IRA account is in. And that's just a form of an investment for retirement. So you could use Schwab, I think Robinhood is the easiest one. So if you don't have any investment accounts, just go ahead and open a Robinhood account. And you can do a Roth, you can do a retirement account, you can also do a normal one. Watch some YouTube videos and learn the difference between each of those. In short, a normal investment account lets you just buy stocks or ETFs, which is exchange trade fund. So it's just a grouping of stocks. You can buy more conservative investments, all that different stuff. Just use AI or go on YouTube and look up some of the best ones to buy. But you can do a normal account where you're just investing that, there's no retirement strings attached, or you can do a retirement account, and that basically until you're 59 and a half, you invest in that account, and when you're 59 and a half, you can start withdrawing without being penalized. But the downside is when you put into those accounts, by the way, I'm not a financial advisor. Don't take any of my financial advice. I think that's what you're supposed to say on here. But when you invest into one of those accounts, then that's a retirement account. You can't withdraw those funds without being penalized until you're that certain age. So I think the penalty is pretty significant. It can be several thousands of dollars for sure if you have a lot of money in those accounts. So you can have a retirement account or like a 401k, that's like the same thing, or you can have a Roth IRA. So say you made $50,000 one year and you put $7,500, I think that's the limit you can do for your Roth IRA in 2026. You put that $7,500, well, if it was a normal retirement account, you could deduct that off your $50,000 income, and you could say, okay, I only made 40 whatever thousand, and you put that money in a retirement account. But you can't do that with a Roth IRA. But the benefit is when you withdraw one day, you don't pay taxes on what you withdraw, whereas with a 401k you do. So go do do a little bit of learning, take some ownership here, and pick out an investment account that you can learn how to do. Pick out a software that you like the look of. Like I said, I recommend Robinhood, but be someone who's investing. Don't just let your 20s go by and you just have spent a bunch of money on cars. And that's what a lot of guys do, but it's not wise. So invest, and if you're gonna invest well, you also need to budget. This is the last area of financial planning we'll discuss. Budgeting is something that very few people do, but what you're doing is you're just being intentional. If I ask you how much you spend a month on groceries, or if I ask you how much you spend a month on entertainment, you should know those numbers if you're being wise in the way that you plan your finances. So helpful budgeting numbers are the 10-10-80 or the 10-20-70 rule, where you spend either 70 or 80% of your income, and then you save either 10% or 20%, and then you give 10% in both of those models. So if you just live on 70 or 80% of your income, then you're setting out in the right direction when it comes to your budgeting. The last area you need to be very intentional with if you're a Christian man in your 20s is vocational planning. Now, I'm not saying that you have to know what you're going to be doing in 10 years, because ultimately we should trust God with our plans, and we should grow ourselves and be always developing skills. That's a big deal, because even if you don't know that you're gonna be a manager in a certain job in a year, if you don't know that, you can still be reading and growing yourself in your time management. You can still be developing people skills. Like I said, serving in church. If you serve in church for years, you will develop people skills. That's just something that happens. So you may not be a person that's driven to be like a CEO. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about here. But you should have some kind of drive and some kind of direction for where you're going. And if you don't know, guys, exactly what you want to do, then like I said, be building skills. I don't think it's a bad thing to be in college, even if you don't know what you're going to do, because you're enrolling yourself in something that is going to make you uncomfortable. You're going to have to do different assignments. Teachers are going to push you. All those things are really good. And one thing that I noticed, especially in seminary, is I had all these assignments, all this reading that I had to do, and the skills that I learned in managing myself in those assignments, man, those apply to all the other areas of life. not just when I'm preparing a sermon. So enroll yourself in a program, build a skill, take on a job that is going to teach you something, because it's so important to have some kind of drive or some kind of direction in what you're doing for work. And personally, I think that if you know what you're going to do, after say you got to go to college to get that job, if you can work in that field while you're in college, a lot of people do internships, but especially today with the ability to do remote work, if you can get some kind of a job and just do your time while you're in college in that job, that can really set you up for success in the future, because you can have 4 years experience in your field when you graduate college. So it's very helpful to know what you want to do, but at the end of the day, just set some goals, build skills, and have some kind of drive or direction in your work. Don't just sit around and wait for opportunities to come, because here's the thing. One day there's going to be an opportunity that'll come your way if you prepared yourself. But if you're not intentional and you just waste these years when you're in your 20s, you do a bunch of partying, you're always sleeping in, you're not pushing yourself, then those opportunities aren't going to go to you. They're going to go to somebody else, and it's going to affect your family. Here's the last thing you need to think about with your vocational planning. Don't choose a title over daily tasks. Here's what I mean. If you're thinking about applying for a job, talk to someone who has that job. Don't just look at the job description, because a lot of times those job descriptions are written in a very appealing way. And you read the job description, it's like, oh man, that sounds awesome. And you get in the job and you're not doing exactly what you thought you might have been from the job description. Not that the employer is trying to be deceitful, but talk to someone, especially if you can get someone who's worked in that company, or you can talk to someone who's doing that job exactly. Then you can ask them, what did you actually do Monday through Friday? Because you might find out that that accounting job is actually not doing the type of accounting that you want to do. But at the same time, that also might be a necessary evil. You got to do your time before you get some of the better jobs. So what I'm saying is, don't just go for a title. Look at what are the daily tasks that I'm going to be doing, and are those the things I want to be skilled at long term? And if you can line those things up, you're going to be doing a good job with your vocational planning, thinking about your job and your work. And again, you are going to greatly affect your family. So those are the 4 habits. If you're in your 20s, don't waste this time. Be intentional. Grow spiritually. Learn how to manage your time well. Learn how to manage your finances. And think through your job and developing skills for the future. And guys, my name is Michael Thompson. We do personal and professional development on this channel. I hope this video is helpful to you. If you want to learn more about procrastination, if you struggle with that, I did a video. You can go watch that video, and we'll see you in the next one.